Coming from you on board the Odyssey of the Seas, we just boarded this beautiful ship yesterday. So our boarding experience and transportation from Rome to the port is extremely fresh on our minds. We started the day by taking the number 8 tram at 9 a.m. from the Trastevere neighborhood to the train station. We had an 11:30 a.m. check-in boarding time and figured this would take about 2 hours when you figure in the transfers and walk-in. Of course, when you get to the tram, you do have to pay. And the easiest way to do this is to use an Apple Pay or a wireless tap-and-go credit card. Now, one thing that we learned is that you actually have to use 2 different pay methods if you're going to use a phone or a tap pay card. So what I did is I used my phone for myself, connected to my Apple Pay, and since we didn't have time to set up my wife's Apple Pay, we used a credit card, my Southwest credit card, that has no foreign transaction fees to be able to tap and get her onto. It's about €2 or less per person, so very, very inexpensive. It was about a 15-minute ride, and once when you get off the tram, it's literally right around the corner to get to the train station. And this is where Mrs. Tips for Cruisers is going to tell you on how our days start to go a little off tracks. No pun intended.
So once we got to the station, it was pretty easy to figure out exactly which train we needed to take because we were using a combination of our offline Google Maps, which gives you the exact train number and track number, all that, which is great. But there's also a board that tells you exactly which trains and which platform to go to which destination. We had 15 minutes max to buy our tickets and get to the right platform to make the train on time. And we realized that the next train was completely sold out. So if we had missed this, we kind of would have had to wait like a whole hour, which would have put us an hour already behind what we really wanted to do. And we could have missed our designated window. I'll call it that. They'll still let you on, but they want you to arrive on time. And it was a little confusing because obviously we don't public commute in Rome. So we had to ask a few people to help us, and we did have some really nice people who were very, helpful to help us figure out which platform to go to, where to validate the tickets, all the things. We finally got it straight with literally a couple of minutes to spare. And I do mean like 2 minutes to spare before the train pulled up.
And the reason why we only had a couple minutes to spare was because I was using my own tip of downloading the train app, trying to do it in the train app, but the thing wouldn't work. So we had to pivot and use the machine and buy the tickets on the machine. And then it was track number 2. And when you walk outside, it says go to the left, but track number 2 is not there, it's track number 1. So we had to ask people, how do you get to track number 2? Apparently you had to go downstairs and go over and then go back upstairs to get to track number 2. Then the train's about to come, but then you have to validate your ticket. So I'm looking for this validation machine and it's nowhere to be found. I know what they look like from on our way to Rome. And I had to ask once again, and not everyone speaks English in this neighborhood, but that's okay. But eventually you get someone and you learn, oh, it's back downstairs. So I leave Mrs. Tips for Cruisers upstairs along with my luggage. Hopefully she doesn't leave me and get on the train if it comes. Run back downstairs, do the little check-in verification process, which, oh, by the way, I needed help with again because I didn't know how to do that. So some nice person helped me with that. They did the first one and they watched me and waited until I was done to do the second one. So I was very thankful, and I scurried back upstairs where Mrs. TFC was waiting for me.
So the other thing that we learned is some of the machines are a literal like QR scan, while others you have to insert them into the top of the machine for it to like emboss it kind of stamp. So every machine we've come across has been slightly different. They're not exactly the same. So just bear that in mind.
And that's why I love the app, because you just click a little check-in button and you're good. And you have to make sure you validate it, because otherwise when they come by and check your tickets, it's like you didn't buy it and then you're gonna get a fine. After we were on the train, they did check to see if we had our tickets validated, so glad we did that. But it was a very tight freight to begin with. It was 2x2 rows, and you can see a picture here on just how tight it is, and I'll let Mrs. TFC explain how that went.
So in our haste, and obviously at that point, we're getting a little nervous just because we tend to do that. We get a little hyper, but we shoved ourselves into a 2-top, and our luggage is literally in between our legs, and my feet are up in the air very unladylike position, but we finally had a floor top open up, so we were able to sit across, have our luggage in the seats across from us, and it was very comfortable after that. It wasn't bad at all. The train ride was actually quite beautiful because you do go along the coastline and you do get to see some beautiful scenery. It was not a bad train ride. It was very simple, and I believe it was at the end of the line, so we didn't have to worry about not getting off. It was you better get off because this is the end of the line type of situation.
And the train was only 9 and 20 euros per person, so less than 19 euros for both of us from Rome all the way to port. Yeah, then in the maybe 4 euros for the bus, we're up to a total of 23 euros. Once when we got off the train, the signage was wonderful and probably one of the easiest ones to work with. You just follow the signs and then you see these buses. Now you can technically walk to the port all the way from the train station, and it takes about 20 minutes and you're going right along the coast, so beautiful sight. However, we've done a lot of walking the previous 2 days, plus I want to be able to tell you just how to work the shuttle part works. You see a couple big red buses and it says, hey, take you to the port. I also did check to see how much a taxi was. A taxi was going to be 10 euros per person, so that's 20 euros total. Obviously shuttle is going to be cheaper, and it was 6 euros per person. The first shuttle that we went on, the first shuttle that we almost got on was actually a shuttle specifically for MSC cruises. So we went to the next shuttle, which was the Royal Caribbean shuttle, and that was 6 euros per person. So I just tapped my Apple Pay once, I did it again, it looked like they both went through fine, but I learned later in the night that that second transaction actually declined, so apparently we only paid 6 euros. So 12 euros for the two of us on a shuttle that takes you 10 minutes, not even, real quick ride. Like I said, the signage was great, and I'll let Mrs. Tips for Cruisers let you know how it went from when we got off the shuttle and boarding the ship and what that was like.
So as Brian said, that's super easy. I mean, you can see the ship from the shuttle. It's not far away at all, but if you just are tired or you don't want to get sweaty, because it's hot. I mean, you're standing there in the sun with all your bags. It can be cumbersome. It was a super easy ride. But once we got off the shuttle, I have never had a terminal be this smooth or this organized ever. And we've cruised a fair amount. And if you've done Florida, you know it can get quite crazy. People are all over the place, frantic, don't know what's going on, not as organized. This was crazy. They had probably minimum 20 Royal Caribbean people around the edge of the terminal checking people in and doing the check-in process. And they had something that I've not seen yet in a terminal, which was essentially like a group number, kind of like a take-in number, where they had so many of one number they were handing out to each passenger and boarding by groups. So they would call group number 5, and then group number 5 would go up, and really just a couple minutes later they'd be calling group number 6. They were quick, efficient, got you on quickly. The other thing we did not realize, and a bunch of people had already from habit dumped out all their water, they did not check your water bottles or anything. They just let you bring it on. So a lot of people had already emptied out all their stuff, just like at the airport or anything else, and realized, oh, we didn't have to do that. So that was interesting, I guess is the way to phrase it. And we've saw that kind of theme throughout, is that they weren't really checking stuff like they do in Florida or maybe some other ports we've done. It's very strange that they weren't doing more, but it was very quick, very efficient, super nice. We were on the ship well before our normal board time anyway.
So for reference, we spent a total of just under 39 euros for both of us to get from Rome to the port. And that includes roughly 2 euros each for the tram to the train station, the roughly 9 euros each from the train station all the way to the port for a total of 18 euros roughly, and then another 12 euros for the shuttle to the port, which we could have easily saved. So really, we could have done it for about 27 euros total if we would have just walked that last part to go from Rome all the way to the port and on board the ship, versus 100 euros all the way up to, I've seen 180 euros for transportation. And the timing took us 2 hours versus an hour to an hour and a half of what private transportation would take according to Google Maps. Now moving on to what we did as soon as we got on this ship. All right, first things first, turn your phone on airplane mode. Yeah, I'll figure it out. First thing you do is you do the Munster drill. First thing, we want to get that out of the way. So we went ahead and did that. And then obviously you gotta get something to eat. So we went to check out Cafe 270 because that's one of the good quick bite places to eat where it's not very busy. I quickly had my roast beef sandwich, but then the other great place to go to that's quiet and not the windjammer is the Solarium Bistro. And since we arrived at the terminal at 11 a.m. and was handed number 19 and boarded before 11:30 a.m., there was no one at the Solarium Bistro, which is also another place where not a lot of people eat. So I'll let Mrs. Tips for Cruisers explain to you how this day progressed and what our strategy was for the rest of the boarding day.
So Cafe 270, I would compare, if you've done this ship that has Central Park, I would compare it to a park cafe, but amplified. It had a variety of different things that we've not seen before, so it wasn't, the same old stuff. It definitely had some variety, some new little takes on some quick bites, but we went to Solarium Bistro, and again, just wonderful food. They had wonderful Indian food that day. It was so good. Lots of little quick bites, not as crowded as Windjammer, a lot quieter. Definitely not having to fight everyone whose immediate thing is to go to the Windjammer and eat. It's a lot more calmer atmosphere, and you really get to enjoy the boat. So one thing to remember is on day one, this is pretty typical, is that Royal Caribbean team members will approach you about booking specialty dining. It's not bad. I mean, it's not irritating or anything. In fact, a lot of times you can get a good deal. They do pump up night one pretty heavily with discounts. And later on in the day, especially on port days, it's very hard for them to get reservations at the specialty dining. We actually did get a good deal for the Teppanyaki for night 7. We received 35% off for booking it. They technically were going to do 40% had we done it last night, but we just weren't feeling it night 1 because we were pretty tired after just jet lag and everything else. But what was super helpful is that the team member helping us actually gave kind of like what I'll call insider tips. He said, book it on the night that you're in Santorini and do it at sunset because you have a wall of windows behind the table. And I was like, that's incredibly helpful and amazing because it's not something I would have thought about to be like, I want specifically this night, it's specifically sunset.
Yes, so this was the one specialty restaurant that we were thinking about booking before we got on. And specifically because this is the only hibachi teppanyaki restaurant on the Royal Caribbean fleets that has the windows right behind the tables where you can see a sunset. So he not only suggested that, but he also suggested doing it in Santorini. And so he gave us a 35% discount instead of a 40% if we had done it at night 1. But the other interesting thing is the specialty dining that we were offered a little bit earlier on the way there, the person was only offering 30% off. So apparently this is negotiable, and you might be able to negotiate your % off. Now, the price was like $76.99 before the discount, so after the discount it was like $50 and some change per person. Of course, they're gonna upcharge you another $10 to do the special whatever, so it ended up costing about $60 per person for this beautiful sunset over Santorini as we're leaving port.
Now, one thing that we did notice is later on in the evening, we were just kind of scrolling through, what to do and what was on our calendar. And we did notice that, oopsie, he had accidentally booked it for Chops Grill instead.
Well, he didn't. He wrote it down right. I had a copy of my receipt.
Yes, it got typed in wrong. It's not a big deal. Because we're Diamond, we went to the lounge and asked the concierge to please just correct it. Simple fix. Wasn't a big deal. They quickly corrected it without any issues, no issues with the discount, none of that. It was corrected, and I think we saw it change the next day or later. I think it was the next day.
It was the next day. And if you don't have Diamond Access, not a big deal. You can go to any restaurant or guest services. In this case, if it happened to me and we didn't have that special access, which is like a glorified customer service person, really, I would have just gone back to any I would have just gone back to any specialty restaurant or even main dining room. They can fix it there.
So now that we had finished doing Munster, getting a quick bite, all the things, and of course, unexpected reservation, we did our little pro tip of we packed our swimwear in our carry-on backpacks. So we went to the bathrooms, changed, and enjoyed the pool that was completely empty. And I do mean completely empty because everyone was hurrying on board and all the things. And the rooms opened really early on this ship, which I was surprised at. So everyone was doing other things. So we got to enjoy the pool and hot tub basically alone, which was wonderful after a long day of travel. So once sail away started, we went to the secret spot that a lot of people don't know about. There's two what we'll call little jet out wings on the side of Solarium on either side, where it's really like an observation deck. You can go out there and watch the water, watch the scenery, and we did attempt to do some footage, but he kind of moved in a different direction than we anticipated, but that's okay. We will get some more footage of us going in and out of port for the other stops that we make. The other kind of not very well known spot is going up to Lime and Coconut because it is higher up on the ship. A lot of people don't go up there, they stay by the pool deck, but you can get great views from there as well.
After sail away, we went ahead and we're going to make our way back to the room to freshen up and go get something to eat. We passed the Solarium Bistro and they're open for dinner, and we've never ate dinner at Solarium Bistro. We've only used the little secret hack of using them for breakfast and lunch because it's not very many people. I figured to go in there and just see what they had to offer. Well, I went in there to see what they had to offer and it looked great. It's a Mediterranean layout and you have to have reservations. Now, since it was night one, not a big deal, they were able to fit us in and we made reservations and sat down. I did feel underdressed, to be fair. Now, one of the things that we learned about Solarium Bistro that we haven't learned in the 9 years of cruising is that they actually have the same menu every single night. I think this is a positive and it could also be a negative. The positive, of course, is that if you do one thing and you do it every single night over and over, it's gonna be good. And let me tell you, every single thing that we tried pretty much every single thing, was very tasty. A step up from the main dining room, I would say, in my opinion as well. What do you think?
I felt it was very good, and it is Mediterranean cuisine, so it had lots of lots of variety, very, very, very fresh tasting, and it was kind of what I'll call smaller bites. So you got to try more of a lot of different things as opposed to getting one like main dish that's your meal. I mean, yes, you can get more, don't get me wrong, but being able to try like 10, 12 different things versus 2 dishes was really nice.
Now, since you have to have reservations, we want to make reservations for another night. But because it's the same menu every single night, maybe just one more night. So one of the questions I asked is, what night is lobster night? Obviously, I don't want to come to here, even though it's a very nice restaurant, when I can get free lobster. Guess what I learned? There's no lobster night on European cruises.
They do allow you to order a lobster and like filet mignon for an upcharge, same as main dining. But again, I'm not really going to do that. I would rather wait for a lobster night, which we just found out we're not getting, which is okay.
Now, if you want to make sure you get some more tips and stay up to date on a 9-night Greek Isle cruise, be sure to tap or click right here. We will have a review of each port that we stop at, including Rome, Naples, Athens, Ephesus, Mykonos, Santorini, and Crete. Thank you very much. This is Brian and
Mrs. Tips for Cruisers. Thanks for watching.
We'll see you in the next video.